Hello again. Here I have two examples, and in this case we are not going to do a list of factors. We are going to try and do this just by thinking about it in our heads mostly and trying to identify a common factor without having to make a list. So for letter A, here's the approach for letter A. For letter A, I can see that I have a 10 in the numerator, a 50 in the denominator. Now, they both end in 0. That tells me that if they both end in 0, it tells me that they are both even numbers. And I know that all even numbers are divisible by 2. And if you don't know that, then now you know it. Anytime you have an even number, you can divide it by 2 and it will give you a very nice number. It'll give you an even division. Okay, not an even number, but you won't have any remainder left when you divide. That's what I mean by a whole number. It divides evenly. That's what it means. So since they both end in 0, I know they're divisible by 2. I also know that if they end in a 0, they are both divisible by 5. So I don't have to make a list in this case. So I'm going to go with my first choice, which is they're both divisible by 2. If I know they're divisible by 2, this is what I do. I divide the numerator and the denominator by 2. And this is what I have left. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And 50 divided by 2 is 25. Now the problem with not making a list and not finding the greatest common factor is that you end up with a fraction that you can still reduce even further. So that's why I said in the previous video it's a little bit of more work. Because 5 and 25 still have common factors between them. So that means I can divide the common factor out and reduce this to even more. I can reduce this even more to lowest terms, okay? So 5 and 25 already, without making a list, I know they both have a common factor of 5. So I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by 5. And that will give me 1 over 5. And now I've come to a fraction that I'm okay with, 1 over 5. If I think in my head common factors between the numerator, which is 1, and the denominator, which is 5, I know that the only common factor between them will be the number 1. Now having a common factor of 1 doesn't help me at all to reduce, because if I divide the numerator by 1 and the denominator by 1, let's do that, I end up with the same fraction. So that's why the common factor of 1, we never use it, because it doesn't take us anywhere. We're right back to where we started. We reach 1/5. So this is an example I wanted to show you to let you know that you don't always have to make a list. You can try out a common factor that you know they both have, and then whatever you have left from that, you have to look at again and find another common factor to reduce it even more. That's the only problem with not making a list. Here's another example that we can do the same thing with. I have a 12 in the numerator and an 18 in the denominator. Now 12 ends in a 2, 8 ends in an 8. Well, before I continue with letter B, let's do this one again. I'm sorry. Let's go back to 10 over 50. Now, I had said before, I'm sorry about this. Let's go back here. I had said before that 10 and 50 both end in 0. So that tells me that they are both even numbers. So they are both divisible by 2. I also mentioned that when they both end in 0, they're also divisible by 5. Okay? So we can go ahead and instead of dividing by 2 at first, we can divide by 5 if that's the number you think is going to help you. And notice 10 divided by 5 is 2, and 50 divided by 5 is 10. And you end up with a fraction that you can reduce even more. How do I know? Because I know 10 has a factor of 2, because 10 is 5 times 2. So I know they share the common factor of 2. As long as they have a common factor between them that's different than 1, I know I can reduce more. So I can divide the numerator by 2 and the denominator by 2, and I get 1 over 5. So see, you have different options here. Okay, now let's go to this example. For this example, let's see. 12 and 18, I was saying they're both even numbers. So right off the bat, I know they're divisible by 2. So you know what? I'm going to divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2. I know 2 is not the greatest common factor. So that is going to make me reduce this resulting fraction again, just because I didn't use the greatest common factor. I'm using any factor that they have in common. I decided to use 2. So in the numerator, I have a 6, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. So this fraction here, I know I can reduce more. Why I know that? Because first, I didn't use the greatest common factor. Second, there are common factors between 6 and 9. Already I know in my head 6 is 3 times 2 and 9 is 3 times 3. So they share a factor of 3. Anytime that happens where the numerator and denominator share a factor, that means I can reduce it further. So I'm going to divide the numerator by 3 and the denominator by 3 because they both have that common factor. And in the numerator, I get a 2. In the denominator, I get a 3. And this is your lowest term fraction. How do I know I can stop now? Because if I think about the factors of 2, it's 1 times 2. And the factors of 3, 1 times 3. What are the common factors? 1 is the common factor. So we already saw in this example that 1 is never considered a greatest common factor because it doesn't do anything for us to reduce this any further. So I'll stop here. Okay, now I want you to practice with these that I'm going to give you, and you can do it either way. You can do it the way I showed you in the previous video by making the list and finding the greatest common factor and reducing. Or you can do the way I've shown you in this previous 2 examples where you can just, hey, they're both even, I can divide by 2, or maybe I can divide by 5 or by 10, etc. Okay? Use whatever you want. And then hit pause right now. Write these in your notebook, hit pause, and work them out yourself, and then come back to see the answers. Here are the answers for those 3 examples I asked you to work on your own. I hope you got the correct answers. Let's go through them very quickly. Here, 16 over 36, they're both even numbers. All of these are even numbers, so I used the same technique for all three of them. So I divided by 2 in the numerator and denominator and got an 8 over 18, and then I noticed, hey, I have even numbers again. So let's divide by 2 again, and I got 4 over 9. And that's where I stopped, because common factors between 4 and 9, there are no common factors. The only common factor is 1. And when that happens, that means I've reached lowest terms. For this one, I did the same thing. I divided by 2 in both the numerator and denominator, and I got a 7 over 21. And then I see that 7 and 21 have common factors, because 7 times 1 is 7, and 7 times 3 is 21. So they both share a common factor of 7. So I divide by 7 in the numerator and denominator, and in the numerator I get a 1, in the denominator I get a 3, and there is your lowest term fraction. Same thing for this one, but notice this one I had to divide by 2 like 3 times. 32 divided by 2 and 48 divided by 2. I divided it by 2 because they're both even. I got 16 over 24. 16 and 24 both are even numbers, so I divide by 2 again in the top and the bottom, and I get 8 over 12. 8 and 12 are even numbers, so they're both divisible by 2, so I divide by 2 again, and I get 4 over 6. Now 4 and 6 are also even numbers, so they're both divisible by 2, and I get 2 over 3. So this is the bad thing about, just choosing any factor besides the greatest common factor, that you might have to keep reducing until you can't reduce anymore. Okay? Now, if you would have made lists, then this is what you should have gotten. The list for 16 is 1 times 16, 2 times 8, 3 times nothing, 4 times 4. Done with list for 16. Let's do 36. For 36, you have 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12, 4 times 9, 5 times nothing, 6 times 6, 7 times nothing, 8 times nothing, 9 times 4. So I've repeated 9 times 4. That means this list is done. Now let's look at all the common factors here. 1. I also have 2 as a common factor. I also have 4 as a common factor. And I have no other common factors, so the greatest common factor is 4. If I would have taken 16 and 36 and I divided both the numerator and the denominator by 4, look at what I get. I get 4 over 9, and I would reach the same answer I got, you see, without having to divide twice. Let's do the same thing for this one. Let's make a list of 14. 14 is 1 times 14, 2 times 7, 3 times nothing, 4 times nothing, 5 times nothing, 6 times nothing, 7 times 2. I already have it. That means that's it for the list of factors of 14. How about 42? 42 is 1 times 42, 2 times 21, 3 times 14, 4 times nothing, 5 times nothing, 6 times 7, 7 times 6. So I stop because I've reached a repeated factor. So this is it for the list of 42. And now let's circle the common factors. Common factors are 1, 2, 7, and 14. Now, out of all of these factors, what is the greatest common factor? The greatest common factor between these two is 14. That means that the original fraction, if I would have divided by 14 in the numerator and 14 in the denominator, I would have gotten 1 over 3. which is what I got, doing it the other way. Let's do the same thing here, just so that you can see both ways. Let's make a list for 32. Factors of 32. That's 1 times 32, 2 times 16, 3 times nothing, 4 times 8, 5 times nothing, 6 times nothing, 7 times nothing, 8 times 4. I've reached 8 times 4, which is repeating the factors. That tells me I'm done with this list. Let's do 48. For 48 is 1 times 48, 2 times 24, 3 times 16, 4 times 12, 5 times nothing, 6 times 8, 7 times nothing, 8 times 6. I've reached a repeated factor. That's where I stop. Let's circle the common factors. 1 is common between the two lists. 2 is a common factor between the two lists. 4 is a common factor between the two lists. 8 is a common factor. And 16 is a common factor too. What is the greatest common factor? The biggest number out of these that I've circled is 16. That means if I take my original fraction, which is 32 over 48, and I divide by 16 in the numerator and the denominator, that would have given me 2 over 3, which is what I got. Okay, so you can see that there are two ways to do this. There's the long way, and also this way here you would have to know all your multiplication tables, right? Or be able to divide very quickly in your head. When finding 3 times what, you would have to divide 48 by 3 and see it in your head that you have 16, etc. And there's this other way where you know these are even numbers, so you can divide by 2, by 2, and by 2, and keep dividing by 2 until you reach lowest terms. Okay, so there you have it. You can do it either way. I don't care which way you use. All I care about is that you get to your answer in one of the two ways. Okay, so in class you will be practicing this skill, and you will also be practicing another skill that I'm going to do in another video. So I'll see you in the other video.